Hello! It is time for, I'm just going to call it the February 19th Fight Night card, Walker versus Hill. It has a bunch of other names. It's at the Apex, so it's another one of those UFC Vegas cards. And it's not a very strong card on paper. Now, does this mean it's going to suck? Not necessarily. Some bad cards end up being quite good. But we can only judge it based on what it's on paper going in. There are 4 fights I'm particularly interested in. The main event is one of them, so that's good. And I will also give credit where it is due. This was a better card originally. You had Rafael Dos Anjos versus Rafael Fiziev. Would have been a really nice fight. I was kind of looking forward to Romanov versus Latifi, even if it wasn't necessarily going to be a crowd pleaser. And obviously the fight between Kyle Dalkaus and Julian Marquez, much, much better than the fight we're getting now, which is Kyle Dalkaus versus Jamie Pickett. And also John McDessie was going to be on the card. So, that's always fun. So let's start at the top and work our way down. We got Jamal Hill versus Johnny Walker. It's a weird fight in the sense that I feel like this is the worst time for this fight to happen, because I think Hill is still somewhat raw, somewhat good, but raw. And Johnny Walker is, of course, going through this transformation from brawling action fighter to something that maybe has a little bit more upside, a higher ceiling. But he's doing it at SBG, which, while not a terrible gym, it is a gym that is probably overhyped because of Conor McGregor. And we probably ignore how much of Conor McGregor being successful is about Conor McGregor and not about the structure behind him, because that's the same structure that has produced virtually no one else. If you think about it, who outside of Conor is the best SBG fighter that was molded specifically by SBG? Names like Artem Lobov, Cahal Pedred, Brad Katona, Paddy Holohan. Like, there's a lot of names there. There's a lot of very reasonable fighters, but they're not high level. And their biggest other achievement is probably Gunnar Nelson, who is kind of like Conor in the sense that he was molded by other sources and by himself. I'm going to go with Hill. And the reason is I think Walker is still trying to find a way to take his explosive, destructive striking and make it safe enough that he isn't going to be subject to random defeats and random injuries, frankly, because he would often destroy his own body the way he was before. His UFC run has been pretty good, all things considered. Yes, losing to Krylov and Corey Anderson, but both of those are very good fighters. Beating Ryan Spahn, beating Misha Serkinov, beating Justin Ledet, who I think is a really underrated win if you do it by striking. Khalil Roundtree as well, who, again, another underrated win because he's kind of one-dimensional. But if you beat him in that dimension, it's pretty impressive. Whereas Jamal Hill, the win over OSP is his high water mark right now. He's done well. His only loss is a little bit flukish. And I gotta take him. I think he's in a lot of ways kind of what Johnny Walker's trying to become. He's actually quite a bit older than I thought he was. He's 30. He's almost 31. Interesting. I thought he was in his 20s. But he is the older fighter. I was gonna say he's kind of what Johnny Walker's trying to become, but while being younger. But he's not. He's actually he's about a year older. That being said, like I said, just more put together. He's kind of found. He's taken his raw athleticism and explosiveness and action fighterness, and it's married to some reasonable fundamentals already, and that's kind of what Johnny Walker's trying to become. Like, it feels like this fight would have been much more fun earlier when they were both kind of raw, because it would have been that kind of like sloppy mess that we sometimes like, or it would have been better to happen maybe a year, maybe 2 years from now when Walker's kind of learned some things, assuming he does. So it's a bit of a poorly timed fight in that regard, but I'm just hoping Walker is not as ridiculously low output as he was against Thiago Santos, because if that happens again, it's probably going to be a better fight still than the Santos fight, because Hill, I don't think, is capable of being that counter-oriented like Santos is, because Santos is largely kind of a counter guy. He's a guy who's really exciting when it's like, you come to me and I murder you. But when you don't come to him, it can be a little bit dull. And that's what the Walker fight was. This probably won't be that, because I think Hill will at some point come forward and try to impose his own power-based striking game onto Walker. But we'll see. We'll see. Going with Hill, like I said, surprised at the odds. Hill is a like minus 200, minus 300 favorite. Didn't expect that, to be honest. Thought this would be closer. Kyle Daukaus, Jamie Pickett, co-main event. I know people have tried to convince me more on Jamie Pickett over time. And like there is things to like about Pickett. He's big for the weight class. He is very athletic. He's very strong. Despite being not the greatest technical fighter in the clinch, he can bully in the clinch. But he constantly feels like someone who does not want to be in there. And Kyle Daukaus is a guy that I think is being sold kind of low here, because I'm seeing him. He's a smaller favorite than Jamal Hill, which to me is very surprising, because one, this is a late notice replacement fight for Pickett. Two, Daukaus is coming off of a pretty impressive performance against Kevin Holland, which I thought was a little bit star-making. Yes, the accidental headbutt makes it a no contest. It's not a win. But I thought there was a lot of good things to be seen there. And I guess they've just let him cool off a little bit too long. He's been booked a lot here. Cancel fight with Kevin Holland. Holland got hurt. Then it was supposed to be Roman Dolidze. Dolidze got COVID. That is not surprising at all, given what we know about Roman Dolidze. And then, of course, the Julian Marquez fight here, which I don't really think would have been necessarily something to improve his stock, but it would have been way more exciting than Pickett. But yeah, you've got Pickett, a guy who seems fundamentally uncomfortable as a fighter. Makes me wonder why he's doing it. I've always kind of wondered that, because every so often we'll see a fighter come up that has the physical talent to get to the UFC despite being demonstrably uncomfortable with it. It's very weird. He is the better athlete than Daukaus, but I think Daukaus is the better technical guy. I think that Daukaus thrives in the clinch in a way that Pickett's prior opponents have not. I think he can utilize that safe zone for Pickett and land his own offense there. And I think Daukaus should be able to pick this win up pretty easily. I'm just going to quickly look at Pickett's record here. Does he have a history of being finished? Because I know he got finished by Jordan Wright and decision by Nchukwu and Soriano, submitted by Charles Bird. I'm going to say it probably goes the distance. I'll say Daukaus wins this by decision by being a little bit more active, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more confident in there, and he'll get this win. Parker Porter, Alan Bedeaux. Alan Bedeaux is a weird fighter to me, because every time I've seen him fight, there have been moments of good, but I've actually seen him do nothing but lose. His UFC run, 0-2. One became a no contest due to a PED test for Nascimento. And then I saw him get a win in TKO, but it was by DQ. Like I've never seen him win, and I'm always cautious about rating someone based on a solid performance in a loss or things that I see in a loss. Whereas I've seen Parker Porter win against Chase Sherman, against Josh Parisian, a couple of times on the regional scene. I've also seen him lose to people who seem way worse than Alan Bedeaux, like Josh Diekman. I don't know. Porter by decision. I've seen him win. I've not seen Bedeaux win. There you go. It's a sloppy heavyweight fight. Jim Miller, Nicholas Mata. Jim Miller. The problem here is, on a physical level, 38-year-old Jim Miller is just not really a guy that I ever want to trust at this point. But Nicholas Mata is also a guy that I haven't really bought into on a hype level yet. We have seen him win on the Contender Series. We've seen him pick up some very good wins on the regional scene. But we have seen him lose on the regional scene too. We also saw him lose to Gleico Franca on Tough Brazil, which is not great considering Franca at the time was an interesting prospect, but didn't really turn into anything. And he's also been snake bit because he's been booked to fight Hadzovic, Cameron Van Camp, and Jim Miller. Previous to this, he pulled out of the Hadzovic fight. It doesn't say who got pulled out of the Van Camp fight. And then Miller tested positive for COVID, and now he's back. Coming off a COVID test, I don't know. I'm going to go with Mata. This is a case of going with the new hotness and kind of believing Miller's washed. I've, at various points, believed Miller has been washed, and it has turned out to not be the case. Like, I thought Miller was washed back in 2017. It's 2021, and he's coming off of a win against Eric Gonzalez. But at the same time, losing to Joe Selecki, losing to Vince Pichel, losing to Scott Holtzman, this is kind of a low water mark for Miller. And what those guys have in common is that they're not willingly going to grapple from bottom with him. Like they have the wrestling to, if it goes to the ground, be on top, or to keep it standing. And sure, so did Roosevelt Roberts, who Miller beat via submitting by armbar. So there's definitely some venom to the guard of Miller still. I think that Mata has the requisite grappling chops, the physicality in the clinch, as well as at range. And he'll sadly probably beat Jim Miller. And I'm always sad to pick against Jim Miller because I'm a big Jim Miller booster. It's just that I think that his career is at the point where it's been quite long. And I kind of want to see him go the Roxanne Modafferi route. And Chaz Skelly, I believe, later in this card is kind of going the same way. Pick a fight. This will be my grand hurrah. I'm going to go into coaching or whatever second stage of life there is. And the sad, unfortunate thing, of course, is that there isn't a great second stage of life for UFC fighters. And that's why UFC fighter pay is so painful to me. But we're going to go with Mata to win this fight. Oh, this fight. Okay. I am both very excited for Joaquin Buckley versus Abdul Razak Alhassan. And very, very worried about it. Because I'm still not sold on Buckley as a complete package. His UFC fights have been nothing but good, particularly, to be honest. Because, sure, losing to Kevin Holland in your debut, we didn't think much of it at the time, but it's Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland's a very good fighter, and that's a tough debut. And then, of course, the jumping, spinning back kick against Kasanganay, the really nice knockout of Jordan Wright, lost to Lizio de Chirico, which is a downside, and then beating Antonio Arroyo. The Arroyo fight, though, was way more competitive than I wanted it to be. Actually, that one lowered my expectations more than him getting knocked out by De Chirico. But I've never been a big believer in Abdul Razak Alhassan. I think that there is big power in Hassan. There is a massive punching power and many other things. But going up to middleweight, he's lost his intimidation in the clinch. Watching him get kind of ragdolled by Jacob Malkoun. Really, not that I think that's going to play any role in this fight, but it kind of makes me question like how confident, how confident he is that he even has that safety zone anymore. being the big judo guy. I'm going to go with Buckley to win. Alhassan tends to fade. Buckley doesn't seem to. He did knock out Arroyo in the 3rd round. That is to be mentioned. And I'm picking him to probably survive the early rush from Alhassan and then knock him out. Because I don't think that, even though he was knocked out by Di Chirico, I don't think he has the kind of knockout propensity that Alhassan capitalizes on. So, going with Joaquin Buckley, this could be fight of the night, and it could also be a snoozer. Jonathan Pierce, Christian Rodriguez. I don't know enough about Christian Rodriguez. He's a Rufus sport guy, so that's always fairly good, but he has fought nothing of note, like nothing. His most impressive win, I guess, is a 5-1 Junior Cortez. Like there just is not enough that I've seen from him to really have a feeling. So we'll go with Pierce by decision. Pierce is really big. He's 6 feet tall to 5'7". Rodriguez doesn't seem to have a particularly large build. I just wonder, like, I guess I'm just going based on size, which is never a great reason, but it's also something I don't really have a great feel for. Speaking of that, we're kind of in the same boat here with Perrin. Perrin's another guy that I've not seen a ton of. Don't really know a lot about the guys that he's beaten, to be honest, and they don't look terribly impressive on paper. And he doesn't even have really the Rufus Sport pedigree behind him. I mean, Siga John Boston is good, but I don't know. Mauro Batista's looked pretty good. He's been kind of an overachiever because I wasn't overly hyped to see him. And yes, getting knocked out by Trevin Jones, not a great look, but you know, he did beat Jinsu Sun. He did beat Miles Johns. I do think Miles Johns is quite good, which has been largely proven. I'm going to take him to knock out Perrin. I'm not even sure. I am very interested in this fight. So transitioning from a fight of the night, or also possibly terrible one, to 2 fights that I'm just not really interested in. We've got Gabriel Benitez versus David Onama. Glory AK versus Glory MMA. Solid gyms. Solid prospect in Onama's case. Good veteran with a lot of savvy in the case of Benitez. I am kind of curious right now because Onama is ranked at lightweight, probably because he fought Mason Jones. So this does look like he's going. This looks like his first run to? No. He's been at 45 before. Okay, so he started off at 45, went up to 55. Now he's back at 45. Interesting. Okay, that's interesting. There are some pitfalls in my excitement about Onama. And it's that a lot of that excitement comes from a loss to Mason Jones. I just rate Mason Jones highly, and having a competitive fight with him on short notice is very impressive. The problem is that is a trap in MMA of rating someone off of a loss, because there are a number of fighters over the history that have looked good in a loss. Lando Venata maybe is like the best example of this, that we got really psyched about. And then they kind of never really delivered. And that's the question. Is Onama that guy? I trust his size a little bit more. Benitez admittedly tends to do his best work as kind of a ranged kickboxer with a lot of like counters. And being that he is going to have a 3-inch reach disadvantage to an Onama, that does suggest some problems there. It does mean that Onama might be able to be the man to be in control of the range, something Benitez doesn't usually do great against. So when was the last time we saw Benitez? Just curious. Losing to Billy Quarantillo. Yeah, beating Justin James, losing to Omar Morales, losing to Sadiq Youssef. That Morales fight does stand out as one that could be a problem. Because Morales has a lot of the same things going for him that Benitez did, or that Onama does. And also hasn't been great since. Losing to Jonathan Pierce and Giga Chikadze is not necessarily a great look. You know what? I'm going to take a flyer on it. It's not really much of a flyer because he's actually a slight favorite right now, about minus 170. I'm going to go with Onama. I'm going to go with Onama to have that reach and that range be a problem for Benitez to be comfortable. And I'm going to say he's going to TKO him. That feels like a brave call. And then I look at the betting line. It seems like a lot of people are making that call. So I am going to go with Onama, but I'm not going to be surprised if Benitez proves to be just too crafty, too deep of a striker, too good of a counter artist to make that happen. Jessica Rose Clark, Stephanie Egger. Never been a big believer in Stephanie Egger. If we're being honest, never been a tremendously big believer of Jessica Rose Clark, but she has passed pretty much every test I've thought, to be honest, because, you know, losing to Pani Kianzad and Jessica Ai, that's no shame. Beating Jocelyn Edwards, beating Sarah Alpar, Paige Van Zandt, Beck Rollins. She's adaptable. I don't think Edgar is. Edgar is kind of very one-dimensional. I'm going to go with Jessica Rose Clark to win this fight. And Edgar would be way more interesting to me if she wasn't 33 years old. But that's not like in... Oh, it's Edgar feels like she has the skill set of a prospect coming in. Like someone who has a lot to learn and not necessarily a lot of time to do it. And that's why I'm going to go with Jessica Rose Clark, even though I've never been the biggest believer in her. Probably by decision. Chaz Skelly, Mark Striegel. I believe that this is Chaz Skelly's final fight. I had heard that this was his retirement fight. I don't know. He's been cursed. He's not fought since 2019, which is always a bit concerning. I think if it wasn't for that, I'd be picking him very easily. I'm not a big believer in Mark Striegel. Not really, to be honest. I think that every time Striegel's come up against high-level competition, people with like depth in a certain area, he's lost. Except for randomly beating Kai Kara France. I will give him that. He does have that. But also Kai Kara France is a flyweight. I'm still going to go with Chaz Skelly. I think that he has the ability to control this fight. He's very Darren Elkins in the sense that he recovers very well, even though he is hurtable. He's got sneaky submissions. I also am hoping that, like, with this being his last fight, that he's going to be here to bring it. This is also a featherweight fight, and Striegel's usually a bantamweight. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Chaz Skelly to win this fight. Diana Belbita versus Gloria De Palma. I am not sure why this fight has got booked, because De Palma is coming off of 2 straight losses to Cheyenne Velismus and Jinyu Fry. Admittedly slightly higher on the food chain than Belbita, but Belbita is coming off of a win over Hannah Goldie. So it's a bit of weird matchmaking. And also 14-6 versus 5. We're going with Belbita. She's apparently only got about a half-inch reach advantage. It always seems that she's got to have more than a 68-inch reach. Got to. It always feels like she has way more than it's listed. I have no faith in De Palma, so they'll beat it by decision. And then we round off the card with Jesse Strader versus Chad Anghelier. I think that's how it's pronounced. Might be wrong. It's a weird fight because the monster, we'll just call him that, which is Chad, is a guy who is not super physically impressive. There's nothing he does that makes you go, wow, which is why at 35 years old, he's making his UFC debut. I believe this is his debut. Did he fight in the UFC before? I feel like I should know that. And no, he's coming off the Contender Series win back in September. Okay. So yeah, his UFC debut at 35 in a division that ages pretty quickly. And then with Strader, you have a guy who at 5-2 probably shouldn't be in the UFC, but he is also 31 years old. Well, 30 going on 31. And has a lot of the physical tools that you look for. So I'm going to go with the athlete Jesse Strader to win this fight. But it wouldn't in any way surprise me if he didn't, because he is very raw. There's a lot of gaps in his game that someone at some point is going to capitalize on. And of course, he's lost to his only two notable opponents, which is Montel Jackson in the UFC and Marcelo Rojo on the combate scene. He's beaten no one terribly impressive, but neither has the monster, if we're being completely honest, whose biggest win is Brady Heiston, I guess. Hasn't lost since 2014, though. I don't know. Not super interested in the fight because it does feel like two guys who I'm happy are here. I'm always happy someone's in the UFC. Make that dream happen. But it's not people I'm excited about. I think Strader came to MMA a little bit too late and might spend the time. He's at an age where he should be diversifying into a veteran. And he's kind of way behind that curve. And he's not that good of an athlete that I think he can make up for it. So there's the fight card. It's not great on paper. Doesn't mean it's not going to be good. But at the same time, if it is good, it's going to be one of those, man, the UFC cards are always amazing. They're so good. And it's just not true. Like, we have to judge it. We have to judge it based on the track record of the fighters on the card. Otherwise, what is the point of breaking anything down? What is the point of watching a prediction video if you're looking for someone to just say, this fight's terrible, but it'll probably be good because it's in the UFC? I don't really get that. You can tell I'm a little frustrated with that mindset. So enjoy it though. I mean, it's one of those, I dislike calling them free cards because like a lot of people have ESPN Plus just because of the UFC. So you are paying for ESPN Plus to watch the UFC. So it's not free, but it is a card that you have already paid for if you have an ESPN Plus subscription. If you don't have an ESPN Plus subscription, this is not the fight card to get it. But if you're already paying for it, you might as well. And it's a pretty early one too, 4 p.m. I'm going to miss most of this though, because I do have a race this Saturday. So there you go. If you follow my gaming channel, you know this. All right. I will see you guys next time. And I don't know. There's probably a fighter pay video coming up at some point because the debate about fighter pay on social media, it annoys me. Not that people are not immediately like fighters should be paid more, but the excuses given a lot of the time don't hold water. So we might explore that at some point. And I'll see you then. Or the next fight card. What is the next UFC fight card real quick here? Because I always like to say what's coming up next, and I half the time I don't know. We got a fight night coming up on the 26th of February. Islam Makhachev, Bobby Green. Yeah, okay. This one I'm more hyped for because I'm looking forward to Saryukian versus Alvarez. I'm looking forward to seeing what Gregory Rodriguez can do, although his opponent is a little bit lackluster. I'm always going to be up for Misha Cirkunov. Ooh, Jinyu Fry versus Hannah Goldie. I'm bizarrely into that fight. I really feel that could be interesting. Both of them are going down to strawweight, or Goldie going down to strawweight. That's probably a good thing because she's very, very short at flyweight. Excuse me. And yeah, a lot of riffraff. Oh, Terrence McKinney versus Faraz Zaram. That's pretty, or Zion. It's Zion. Pardon me. I don't know why I added an R there. That's pretty fun. So we'll see you then.